Hey everyone, welcome to Movie Marathons HQ, where we do movie marathons connected to new releases and where we enjoy and review some of our favorite movies. This video is part of the Spider-Man Brand New Day Movie Marathon and also connected to the Avengers Doomsday Movie Marathon, where we are watching one movie every week as we prepare for the release of Spider-Man Brand New Day in July 2026 and Avengers Doomsday in December 2026. Today we are discussing Venom: The Last Dance. Released in 2024 and directed by Kelly Marcel, this is the final movie in the Venom trilogy and also the directorial debut of Kelly Marcel, who had been a writer on the previous two Venom movies. Overall, I actually do like this movie a bit. I don't like it a lot, but I do like it a little bit. If I were to rank all of the three Venom movies, I think this one would be my favorite one, followed by the first Venom, and then last would be Venom: Let There Be Carnage. I still think the character is kind of unlikable, but in this movie he was more enjoyable, and there was a few more fun and exciting things that happened that worked for me compared to the other two movies. For positives, I would mention the visual effects, the plot and overall story of this movie, the brightness and life that I felt this movie had that the other movies didn't, and also Eddie's character arc. I liked where things went in this movie compared to the other two. And for negatives, I would mention the random family subplot and the ultimate villain that we get introduced to named Null. Spoilers ahead for Venom: The Last Dance. So visual effects, I have mentioned this as a positive in the other two Venom movie reviews, and I think the visual effects look really good. They look like the same amount of goodness in this one as they do in the other two movies. But I think especially the xenophage character, creature, monster thing that chases Venom and Eddie throughout the movie looks really, really good. As it was interacting with the environment and even water in one scene, it looked like it really fit. And of course, it's this alien thing that could not possibly exist on our planet. But I think the xenophage looked really good. And as we get into the other Venoms and things, I think they all, I shouldn't say the other Venoms, the other symbiotes, I think they all looked good. And the way that they had some differences to what they could do compared to each other, I think it just looked really great. The tendril stuff that all of the Venoms do, which I think is pretty critical in the visual effects department for this type of a movie, I think looked really, really well done, and that would be the first positive. And then another positive is the plot and overall story of this movie. I think in the first Venom movie, I just didn't feel invested in the character of Eddie, but then also the story that Eddie was going in. It was like he got taken over by this symbiote thing and he doesn't quite understand it, and then there's a guy that is supposedly a bad guy and Eddie's got it out for him and the guy's got it out for Eddie, so it's kind of a cat and mouse, and then it gets to the end of the movie. And then the plot in the second movie was, this is bad because now there's another one and he's red and he's a crazy guy. And those stories just didn't draw me in. In this one, the story is that the successful symbiosis between Eddie and Venom has created a codex, and that codex has been sensed by other symbiote creatures, and then the ultimate villain, Null, who we'll get into later, senses that this codex is on Earth, so then they send the other guys to collect the codex. And it makes sense because now Eddie and Venom are unique. Their symbiosis worked. So it makes sense why they're being hunted. It has consequences from the last movie where he kind of came back to life, and that's what created the codex with their positive symbiotic relationship. I think this plot has implications for this one because they're being pursued by this very destructive and capable creature. So it just lines it up. There's got to be a sacrifice. Either Eddie or Venom has to go. And this whole thing about how Eddie was so self-centered and that he had to kind of become less self-centered. And then now these two really do get along fairly well. But the plot sets it up that one of them is going to have to be sacrificed, I just think is the strongest plot that we've had so far in these movies. So I really enjoyed that. I'd also mentioned the brightness and the fun. I mentioned in my Venom: Let There Be Carnage review, the movie was physically dark and I had to turn up the brightness on my TV just to see what was happening. I didn't find that issue in this movie, so maybe the color correction or the cinematography was improved, at least on my TV screen. But I like that the other symbiotes had colors, and I know they're just taking inspiration from the comics where the other symbiotes just had different colors and stuff, but I like that they didn't dull that down too much. So there just felt like there was some life and some movement and like some vigor in this movie. So maybe that was the director who brought a lot of passion and it kind of made it onto the screen. But I like that this movie had some brightness and some energy that I felt the other movies did not have. And finally, I like Eddie's character arc here. In the first movie, he was a very self-centered character. He did some horrible things to his fiancée, and then he got the consequences here. And I also noticed that a lot of the supporting characters from the previous two Venom movies are just not here. He's kind of on his own. So that was interesting. But his whole thing has been he's self-centered and Venom is forcing him to share his life with somebody. Against his will, of course, but he's still sharing his life with Venom. And then I don't love the random family subplot because it never quite worked. But I do like that Eddie, played again by Tom Hardy, finally sees that like he can be part of something bigger and he doesn't need to keep fighting against Venom. He can just embrace it and have this companionship. I thought it finally gave him some things to do, and he did some nice acting here. Tom Hardy always does, but as I had said before, it's entertaining seeing him be a wild man, but I just didn't like the character. Here, he does not do the despicable things that he had done in the previous two movies. And I just liked the theme of acceptance and belonging, and even though Venom and Eddie are not perfect either way, together they can make something more, some synergy happening in the relationship. So I like that. For negatives, there is a random subplot in this movie where Eddie comes across this family and they're kind of some hippie conspiracy theorist type characters, and he gets a ride with them towards where he wants to go. Eventually he wants to get to New York City, so he hitches a ride with them, and then he learns some life lessons along the way, and then they disappear, and then they come back later and kind of help him save the day. And like that's all tropes that we've seen before, and it's fine. And I've seen it work, but here I just felt like every time this family came up, the momentum kind of halted, just ran out, and then it would get back to what Eddie and Venom were doing, and it would pick up again, and then go back to the family, and it would just slow down the pace of the movie. That could have just been my perception and might not have been everybody's perception. The actors were fine, and they did their job according to the screenplay. I just didn't really like every time that family came up, it just messed with how things were going. Even though I did see how it worked into the overall story, and especially the finale, I still would call it a negative for me. And finally, the villains in this movie are the xenophages and other characters from Venom's homeworld sent by Null to retrieve the Codex. And so they're kind of faceless antagonists, and that's fine. But then we get introduced to this really, really bad guy called Null, and you see him in the darkness with his hair hanging into his face, voiced by Andy Serkis, who directed the second movie, Venom Let There Be Carnage. So that's interesting that he didn't direct this one, but he did voice a new character. And so we get introduced to Null, and we are not shown anything about him. We are told by Venom and by the other symbiotes that Null is a bad character and really bad news for Eddie. And if he's pursuing you, it's not good. And if he escapes with the help of this Codex, that is not going to be good for the universe. But they don't show us anything. We're just supposed to believe them that he's a bad guy. So they set up this big bad villain with no reason to fear him, I found. He wasn't even that bad to the symbiotes around him. He just looked scary. And in the comics, he's a scary character, and I get that they were trying to pull that in there. But in this movie, it just seemed like, I don't know why that needed to be in there. I suppose the purpose of having the Codex is to let him out of his imprisonment. So if you take him out of it, then why would they be pursuing the Codex? So I get that it worked for the overall movie. Just would be a negative for me. And then adding to that, outside of the movie, kind of the meta-analysis of that character was the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters, or the Spunk, as we've talked about before, was really on its way out at the point that this movie was greenlit and written and performed and made and edited and released. The writing was on the wall that the spunk was probably never going to work, but certainly by this point it wasn't going anywhere. So to introduce a new big bad guy called Null, I don't see the point of that just from a meta analysis of it. Maybe the producers at Sony thought they had something cool, and if this movie had worked better and performed better for audiences, maybe Null would have turned into something, and they were hedging their bets on that. I just don't get it. I don't get why you introduce what they probably hoped was a Thanos level threat in this third Venom movie after all these strange things like Morbius and Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter hadn't come out at this point, but that was also greenlit and part of this weird side universe of Spider-Man characters without Spider-Man. So it's just weird to include Null from that standpoint as well. Now, how might Venom the Last Dance connect to Spider-Man Brand New Day? Well, Tom Hardy is not on the cast list for Brand New Day, so I don't think he's going to be appearing. But at the start of this movie, we see a continuation of the post-credit scene we had seen before, where Eddie Brock is transported from his universe to the main MCU Avengers universe through Doctor Strange's spell and Spider-Man No Way Home. And as he's talking with the bartender who's talking about Thanos and Infinity Stones, Eddie Brock gets sent back, but a piece of the symbiote gets left in the main Avengers universe. So there are some hints in the Spider-Man Brand New Day first trailer that maybe the black suit Spider-Man is coming. So maybe in that movie, he gets taken over by the symbiote, and then we get the Black Center Spider-Man from the comics. I think that's more likely in the Secret Wars movie, which is coming out in December 2027. So that would be my guess. Now, how might Venom the Last Dance connect to Avengers Doomsday? Tom Hardy is not on the cast list for Avengers Doomsday, so I don't think he's going to be a character there. But at the start of this movie, we see a continuation of the post-credit scene that we saw before, where Eddie Brock is transported from his universe to our MCU universe because of Doctor Strange's spell in Spider-Man No Way Home, and then he gets zapped back, but a piece of the Venom symbiote is left in our universe. I don't think we're going to see Black Suit Spider-Man in Avengers Doomsday. I think there is a fair chance we see Black Suit Spider-Man in Spider-Man Brand New Day, but if not in those two, I think it would be in Spider-Man in Avengers Secret Wars. In the Secret Wars comic books, that's where the Black Suit Spider-Man was introduced, so that would be really interesting to explore that there, depending on where things leave off after Endgame. So I don't think we'll see Tom Hardy or Venom in Doomsday, but I think we will set up things to come. So that's my review of Venom the Last Dance. What did you think of this movie, and how do you think it might connect to Spider-Man Brand New Day or Avengers Doomsday? Make sure to let me know in the comments below. Follow Movie Marathons HQ on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and also on Letterboxd, where you can see the lists of all the movie marathons we have going on right now, like the Avengers Doomsday Movie Marathon, Spider-Man Brand New Day Movie Marathon, and the Toy Story 5 Movie Marathon. The next movie in this marathon is Tobey Maguire's original Spider-Man. See you at the movies.